Welcome, 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 welcome. It is bingo time again, and that means it's time for a TBR video. If you don't know what bingo is, this is a readathon put on by the subreddit rfantasy over at reddit.com every year, where you get a set of 25 reading prompts and you have to read a book that matches each prompt. There are a few rules. The first is you can't repeat books for squares. The second is you can't repeat authors. The third is it has to be finished by March 31st, 2026. And number 4, you can only use a reread of a book for one square. And finally, this is important for me this year, you can substitute one square on the bingo board with a square from a previous year. And I am going to be doing that. But let's just jump right in. The very first square is Knights and Paladins. And this square, just like every other square, has a hard mode attached that just makes things a little bit trickier, and I'm going to be attempting to hit hard mode for every single one of these. So, Knights and Paladins is one of the protagonists is a paladin or a knight, and the hard mode is the character has an oath or a promise to keep. For a lot of these squares, I have books that I think are going to fit, and that I'm planning to read, and then I have some backups and some maybes. My maybes for this square, The Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. I'm really hoping I don't need to end up relying on this one because it's huge and I'm still in the middle of the Wheel of Time. But I'm told that this is full of knight people making oaths and promises. Another possible maybe for this square is Gideon the Ninth. I'm told the main character is referred to as a cavalier, which translates to knight, apparently, so they might be an oath or a promise to keep in this, if cavalier counts as knight. But the actual book I'm planning on reading, and I'm pretty sure is going to fit the square, is Kingsblade by Andy Clark. This is a Warhammer 40,000 novel based on the knights. They're these big robots, and the people inside them are called knights. That is their title. And it's a Warhammer book with knights in it. If there isn't someone making an oath in this book, I'll eat a hat. Square number 2 is Hidden Gem, a book with under 1,000 ratings on Goodreads, and the hard mode is published more than 5 years ago. I am doing my best to fill every square I can on this board with books I already own. I have a plethora of books that are sitting unread, and I luckily found one that is over 5 years old and has less than 1,000 ratings on Goodreads. It is by an author that hasn't really hit for me just yet. I read 2 of his books and neither of them kind of landed quite right for me. And that author is Greg Bear, and the book is Hijira.
Hijira or Hijira.
Hijira or Hijira. But this is a Greg Bear book. As I said, I haven't really gotten on with him so much so far, but there's a pretty short book, about 250 pages or so, and it sounds pretty interesting. And as of right now, it only has about 400 ratings on Goodreads, and it was published in 1987. And it seems that my used copy that I picked up used to be owned by Gregory. Up next is Published in the 80s. This is a book that was published in the 1980s with the hard mode that it is written by an author of color. Here is a book I did need to pick up, but it was one on my TBR anyway, so I'm going to read Dawn by Octavia Butler. I loved Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. It has been sitting on my coming soon shelf for so long because I just don't know how to review this book. I might read Parable of the Talents and then review them together. Anyway, I'm really excited to get to Dawn by Octavia Butler, so that's that square lockdown. Next is a hard one. This one is High Fashion. Read a book where clothing, fashion, or fiber arts are important to the plot. This can be a crafty main character or a setting where fashion itself is explored. And the hard mode is the main character makes clothes or fiber. I have some suggestions from Reddit for this square that I don't own. The first is I Who Have Never Known Men, which sounds very interesting. Another one is Howl's Moving Castle, which is a book I've never really been particularly interested in reading. But I do own 2 books that might fit. The first of which is The Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson, the first book in the Mistborn Era 2 series. Note, yes, you can only use an author once, so if I end up using this for this square, I wouldn't be allowed to use Brandon Sanderson anywhere else. That's why these Brandon Sanderson books are all kind of maybes. I'm going to find a spot somewhere on this list for Brando Sando, but I don't know where. Apparently this book has a guy that makes disguises, and that might count, I'm not sure. The other book I have is Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. I'm told this one should almost certainly fit the scope, so that's probably the book I'll read. Next is Down with the System. This is reading a book where a plot revolves around disrupting a system. The hard mode is that it's not a governmental system. I have a few options for this one as well. And again, it's 2 books that I already own and I really want to read, so I'm really keen to get to either of them. They should both count for hard mode, I believe, but I'll be able to make that decision after I've read them. The first is by Scott Hawkins, The Library at Mount Shar. Probably equal parts disturbing and interesting, but I believe a big part of it is about taking down like the familial system that is in place there. And the second is by Mark Lawrence, The Book That Wouldn't Burn. And according to the Reddit, this should count for hard mode. So it'll be one of those two probably filling this square. Up next is Impossible Places. Read a book that would break a physicist. The geometry, non-Euclidean. The volume, big on the inside. The directions, merely a suggestion. The hard mode is at least 50% of the book takes place within the impossible place. I have read so many books that would be perfect for this. I could even reread A Short Stay in Hell by Stephen Peck, which is one of my favourite books of all time. But I think I'm going to go with a new one. I think this is the perfect chance to finally read Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. Taking place in, I think, an impossible house. This is such a highly recommended book that has been sitting on my shelf for a criminally long time. Up next, A Book in Parts. Read a book that is separated into large sections within the main text. Parts, acts, years, etc. And the hard mode is the book has 4 or more parts. I had quite a long list of possible maybes for this one. But then I started reading Shroud by Adrian Tchaikovsky, and I'm about halfway through the book and I'm on part 3. So I'm pretty sure I'm actually just going to accidentally get this one. But on the off chance that there isn't a part 4 coming, I have China Miéville's Perdido Street Station in this lovely broken binding edition, and so that might end up being what I read. Up next is one that I'm struggling with, is Gods and Pantheons. Read a book featuring divine beings, easy enough. Hard mode, the book has multiple pantheons involved. I'm not sure if I have a book that fits. I have Gunmetal God by Zamil Akhtar. I'm not sure if there are multiple pantheons in this one, but that's a maybe. I also somewhere have Brandon Sanderson's Warbreaker that some people are suggesting might fit hard mode. And I do also have book 4 of Dungeon Crawler Carl. I know there has definitely been gods mentioned in the previous ones. The 3rd book had something with a god in it. I'm just not sure if this one will. It is The Gate of Feral Gods, so I think there's a good chance, and I am definitely just going to read this book anyway, so I think I'll probably read this one first, and then figure out if I still need to look for one. If you have any suggestions, please leave them in the comments below. The next one is Evil. It is read the last book of a series, with the hard mode being the series has 4 or more books. I'm currently reading Wheel of Time, but I'm only on book 3. I don't think I'm going to read the rest of the 12,000 page tomes before next March. So that one's out. And every other series I'm reading, I think I'm at least 4 books away from the end. Red Rising, I still need to read the last 3, and the 4th book isn't even out yet. Brandon Sanderson's Skyward, I need to read the last 3 books. I've only read the first one. Raven 1 has 3 more sequels, but they're not speculative fiction, so they probably don't even count. I think I'm going to finally get around to finishing the Expanse series. I have read the first 5 books of the Expanse, which means I have 4 books left to read. 4 books is quite a lot to read for a bingo square, but hey, they're books I want to read anyway, so let's get to it. The next one is a book club or read-along book. Our Fantasy hosts a series of book clubs, and each month some of them will pick a book to read, and the hard mode is just to read it at the same time as them and take part in the discussion. I'll just keep updated on what books are coming up, and at some point during the year, just jump on one of them. Then, we're getting onto the 3rd row now. We are at Parent Protagonist. Read a book where the main character has a child to care for. The child doesn't have to be biologically related to the parent. And the hard mode is the child is also a major character in the story. For this one, I think I'm just going to finally get around to reading a book that's been sitting on my shelf since I started getting interested in fantasy. And I think I'm going to finally read The Sword of Taigen by M.L. Wang. This is a lot heavier than I thought it was going to be. But this is a book that lots and lots of people recommend, and I love me a standalone, even quite a big one. Apparently this should fit the hard mode, so I'm excited to get to it. Up next...
Epistolary. Epistolary.
Up next is Epistolary. It's not how I would have pronounced it. This is to read a book that prominently features diaries or journal entries, letters, messages, newspaper clippings, etc. With the hard mode is the book is entirely told in epistolary format. Again, I have a book that I've been promising to read. I've done a video where I agreed that I would read it by the end of September, and I've been wanting to read it for years. It is Bram Stoker's Dracula, which I believe takes place entirely in epistolary format, and so that'll be my book for the square. Up next is The Center Square, and it is published in 2025 with the hard mode being it is a debut novel. There are quite a few choices here if you're looking for fantasy books, but I think there's a lot of fantasy books on my list already, so I was actually looking for a sci-fi book, and I had trouble finding debut sci-fi books that are coming out this year. But I did finally find one that I thought sounded really interesting. It is Veritas by P.G. Saunders. It's in the mail, so I don't have it here to show you just yet, but the cover looks pretty interesting. I believe it's about power struggles on Pluto in the future, but either way, it's a sci-fi book set on Pluto, which is super interesting to me, and I'm really excited to get to it. Up next is read a book by an author of colour, with the hard mode being make it a horror book. I had a few choices here. I have a few Stephen Graham Jones books I haven't gotten to yet, but when I was in the bookshop a while back, I did see... Ooh! that went badly. I did see by one of my favorite horror authors, they wrote Mexican Gothic. It is Silvia Moreno Garcia's Silver Nitrate, a horror book by the author of Mexican Gothic. I'm super excited to get to it. That's my book for the square. Up next is small or indie published or self-published. This is read a book published by a small press, not one of the big 5 publishing houses or Bloomsbury, or it's self-published, and the hard mode is it has under 100 ratings on Goodreads at time of reading. I have already finished this square. There will be a review coming up for it soon, but when I saw that Hand of God by Yuval Kordov had less than 100 ratings. It had 98 at the time that I read it. I think I was the 99th. I might have even been the 100th, so you probably can't read it for this anymore, sorry. I jumped on it, and I absolutely adored this book. It is like battle mech meets religion meets post-apocalyptic meets Warhammer 40k. It is not anything close to what I was expecting, and I adored it, and I've already picked up books 2 and 3, which I'm going to read soon. Fourth row, we have a biopunk. Read a book that focuses on biotechnology or its consequences, and hard mode, there is no electricity-based technology. Another great chance to read a book that everyone is super excited about and everyone said was amazing. I'm going to check out Robert Jackson Bennett's The Tainted Cup. I have seen some reviews from reviewers that I respect saying that it wasn't really all that for them, but I need to read something for biopunk. It's pretty highly reviewed, so I'm going to check it out for myself. Up next is Elves and/or Dwarves. Read a book that features the classical fantasy archetype of elves and dwarves. In hard mode, the character is an elf or a dwarf. For this, I'm going to read at least the first novel in the Gotrek and Felix Omnibus, a Warhammer fantasy series, and it will be my first Warhammer fantasy book after only reading Warhammer 40k so far. So, keen to get to that one. Up next is LGBTQIA protagonist. Read a book where the character is under the LGBTQI plus umbrella, and the hard mode is the character is marginalized in at least one other axis, be that gender, race, disability, something like that. For this, I'm going to read A Memory Called Empire. This is a space opera book that I was almost going to read last year for bingo, but I ended up accidentally reading another one, and so it manages to find its spot in this year's bingo. Up next, we have another square I need some help with. This is Stranger in a Strange Land. Read a book that deals with being a foreigner in a new culture. The character, or characters if it's a group, must either be visiting or moving in as a minority, and the hard mode is the main character is an immigrant or refugee. I have a couple maybes here. First off is Elder Race by Adrian Tchaikovsky, which I'm just realizing now probably won't work because I'm probably going to end up using Shroud for another square, but maybe that one would work. It's also been hinted to me that maybe Elantris by Brandon Sanderson might fit this square, but I'm not sure. There's the obvious, reading Stranger in a Strange Land, but I'm not sure I want to read that book because Robert Heinlein hasn't really worked for me so far. But yeah, I'm a bit lost on that one, so let me know if there's anything that you can think of. Up next is an odd square. It is just Recycle a Bingo square. So I went back to 2022's bingo and I picked out Weird Ecology. This is the story takes place in a world that is wildly different from our own and includes such things as a unique environment, strange flora, and the hard mode is it's not written by Jeff Vandermeer or China Miéville. The example they used for this square is The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker. Apparently it is set in a world that's like poisonous and there's no trees, and so the ships are made out of dragon bones. And that sounds really interesting, and it's on my shelf, so that's the book I'm going to pick. Up next is Cozy Sci-Fi. They say it's up to you to pick what cozy means, and the hard mode is that is an author that is new to you. I think when people think of Cozy Sci-Fi, there's one author that comes up, that's Becky Chambers. I haven't read Becky Chambers yet, so I will finally read The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. Up next is a fun one. It is generic title. Read a book that has one or more of the following words in its title: blood, bone, broken, caught, dark, shadow, song, sword, or throne. And the hard mode is the title contains more than one of these words, or contains one of these words plus a number or an animal, and the animal can be real or mystical. There are 2 Warhammer 40k books that I have pegged for this square. The first is The Wraithbone Phoenix. Wraith and Phoenix, both mystical sort of creatures, and bone being one of the words. And the other one is Shadow Sword. Shadow and sword both being on the list. The issue is, I don't own these books, and this is the price of them, because Black Library won't print me books that I want to buy. So I might do an audiobook, I might do an ebook, or I might just break down and read Tad Williams's The Dragonbone Chair. Dragon Bone, that fits the hard mode. Alright, up next is a square that I didn't really find that interesting. It is not a book. It is just do something that's like not a book. Watch a movie, watch a TV show, play a game. I do all that stuff anyway. I don't need bingo to tell me that. I'm here for books. So I'm using my substitution to replace this one with 2021's Set in Asia, Square, where the hard mode is it's written by an Asian author. And so for this one, I'm going to read The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. F. Kuang's Babel is one of, if not perhaps my favorite book of all time. So I'm really excited to read more from her. And finally, the last square is Pirates. Read a book where the characters engage in piracy. Hard mode is not seafaring. I luckily picked up the steampunk story Retribution Falls by Chris Wooding recently. They are pirates in an airship with like dogfighting little fighters and stuff. It's steampunk, it's not seafaring, it's pirates, it counts, and that is bingo. If you have any suggestions for any of these squares, then please leave them in the comments below. Are you going to take part in bingo this year? Play along with me. I had such a great time with bingo last year. I have a whole playlist with all of the reviews and all of the TBR videos up here. Pachow. If you're still watching, thank you so much. If you want to see my reviews for all of these, I am going to review every single bingo book I read this year. Make sure to subscribe. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Most of all, just remember to keep reading, keep bingoing. Thank you so much, and ciao.